Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we've got an early impression, a first wearing if you will, but a true first wearing. I've been wearing this for the last 4 hours or so on my skin. It's a new fragrance, which new fragrances do not get much play on my channel, mostly because I'm constantly disappointed and mostly because my heart lies in the vintage realm. No matter how good modern niche fragrances are, I love my Rojas. I love my Amouages. They just don't give me that heart flutter, you know, that love, that true love, like you have something that you really love wearing, you know, deep in your soul, like some of the vintage fragrances I have. Yesterday, me and Rich Mitch coordinated, and we both wore vintage Chanel Cuir de Russie from the 1980s, and I absolutely adore that fragrance. I sent him a sample a year or two ago, and he compared it to his Les Exclusifs version and said the one that I had from the 80s is much more leathery and much less floral. And so we wore that. Go watch our live stream. It's up on my channel. We did a two and a half hour live stream. We talked about vintage fragrances we're looking forward to wearing in the winter and stuff like that. Anyways, long-winded way of saying my heart is with the vintage Antaises, vintage Coros, vintage Derby from Guerlain. Those are the loves that I have. And, you know, these new fragrances, they are... well, we'll talk about kind of the pros and cons, but this is a 2022 release, okay, from Louis Vuitton. And to be honest, I own 0 of their bottles. Now, would I like to have a bottle of something like Nuit de Feu? Absolutely. Will I pay $485 for it? Hell no. And I never see them discounted. They're almost like Chanel's in you know, in that way. And I knew that they were mainstream when one of my buddies that I work with, who is not into perfume, hit me up and said, "Hey man, I know you like fragrances. Have you ever tried the new Louis Vuitton stuff? It's really good." And I went, oh God. You know, that was a year or two ago when they really started to get into launching their perfume line, you know, heavier and heavier. And they do have a good in-house perfumer. The in-house perfumer for Louis Vuitton, if you don't know, is a gentleman by the name of Jacques Cavalier, and he's created some of my all-time favorites. He created Tuscan Leather. He created M7. He did Opium pour Homme, which I own the EDT. I really like it. He did Rive Gauche, one of my favorite barbershop scents. He did Pacha de Cartier, the EDT from the early 90s. He's had some amazing releases. And so they have a great in-house perfumer. And, you know, this line, though, for me, it almost seems like it's a line where it is a step up from designer. Okay, so for somebody who wants to move up from something like Dior, Yves Saint Laurent, and try to go to the next step up in designer level and price, but they don't want to go buy, you know, these really high-end Rojas or something like that, they can go to Louis Vuitton. It's kind of somewhere in the middle, in my mind. Now, I know they have their crazy expensive oud. You know, I think Louis Vuitton's oud is like $1,800 or something insane. So they do have the, you know, really high-end prices, but most of the fragrances for them that I've seen sit somewhere between $300 and $500, I think. This particular one, 100 mils will set you back $365, just FYI. And this is a 2022 release. This is brand new. So let's get into the perfume. So the name of the fragrance is Fleur du Désert. Okay, Fleur du Désert. And my French is a little rusty, but my guess is that it is flowers of the desert. And the pictures, if you go look at the website, let me just do a fresh spray just because, you know, I've had this dry down now for 4 hours, so we'll start fresh here. So when you first spray, it starts off very floral, extremely floral, lots of 3 notes. Jasmine, orange blossom, and rose centrifolia. Now that rose centrifolia is also mixed with Bulgarian rose. And it's actually a really pleasant floral opening. Okay, so whenever you first spray this, it's listed as unisex, but it's going to come across as very traditionally feminine. Okay, so if you are afraid of florals, actually this might be one to try if you're afraid of florals, and I'll tell you why once we get into how the composition develops. But the first hour is my least favorite part of the fragrance. I've enjoyed the last 3 hours versus the first hour much more. So I probably shouldn't have done a fresh spray, because the dry down is where I really started to enjoy the fragrance. The opening was teeth gritting. And the reason it's teeth gritting for me, outside of the floral aspect, now there is a very natural smelling Jasmine Sambac note. And Jasmine Sambac is one of the ingredients that Russian Adam was kind enough to send to me. I actually have it right here. Here's the actual Jasmine Sambac. And it's here as well. And it is, white floral, almost like a honeyed vibe that you get from it. And the rose starts to stand out. Okay, so the three flower interplay with each other. So you get the Jasmine Sambac, you get the orange blossom, which is very well done here. Orange blossom can sometimes come across as cheap smelling if it's not done with high quality ingredients. Here it does smell like it's they're at least using good quality ingredients. Orange blossom absolute, and the Centrifolia rose absolute, and the Bulgarian rose essence is what they call it. So the rose starts to kind of take over as the minutes go by, 5, 10, 15 minutes in, and the rose comes off as smelling almost like you're smelling a candied, dusty rose. That's the way I would describe the rose in this perfume. Candied, dusty, with those slightly honeyed facets that the Jasmine Sambac will give you, okay? So there is a note of honey that's actually listed in the note tree, but the honey almost comes across as if it's emanating from the jasmine itself, not from an actual honey note, if that makes sense. That's the way that I perceive it. And the reason that I decided to wear it on skin, well, number one, the person sent me a very generous sample, and so what the hell? I saw, you know, these things, people are selling these little samples for $20 to $40 online. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. These should be, you know, given away for free to people who want to try the perfume. But yeah, people are selling them for 20 to 40 bucks. And I think they do the whole Celine thing where they give you the bottle. Let's say you buy a bottle and they give you a sample of the same fragrance in that box. And they say, wear the sample first. And if you don't like it, don't actually open the perfume itself, just return it. That's the Celine method is the way I think of it. LVMH does own Louis Vuitton, of course. LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy. And so, but Louis Vuitton, for me, I see them as like a newer up-and-coming brand, okay? They're not the old-school perfume houses that I think of. I don't think of them when I think of Dior or when I think of Guerlain. So they have a lot of catching up to do. But they have a powerhouse behind them. LVMH is a behemoth. And they have a good in-house perfumer. So the reason that I decided to wear this on skin is a couple things. Number one, there's a note of Assam oud in here. And I went, ooh, okay, Assam oud. I would really like to see what level of oud Louis Vuitton is going to give us. Is it going to be something that's natural and realistic smelling? You know, is it going to be high quality? Is it going to smell like you're smelling real oud like you are in Frederic Mall's The Night? Or a Russian Adam fragrance, like I just happen to have this one right here, Russian oud. Are you going to get that real oud smell, which is unmistakable, okay? Unmistakable, and there's lots of different types of oud, obviously. You can have clean oud, you can have animalic oud, you can have barnyard, fecal. I understand all that, right? But are you going to get that real oud vibe here? And unfortunately, that's a disappointment, because the oud here does not smell high quality. It smells like you're smelling the oud ingredient that these houses use by the absolute bathtub load, bucket load. You'll see it in stuff like Tom Ford's Oud Wood, okay? LVMH's competitor, Estee Lauder, owns Tom Ford. And so that synthetic oud, if you want to call it that synthetic oud shows up. Now, I don't know if LVMH or I should say Louis Vuitton, uses a little tiny drop of real oud and 99.999% of the fake stuff that you find in all the other Western oud fragrances, just to say they use real oud. I haven't seen them claim they use real oud. It doesn't smell like real oud to me. And so that was a little bit of a disappointment. Now, I'm sure the $1,800 for whatever, you know, their Louis Vuitton oud, if you will, I'm sure that is using the real stuff. But here, it's not. It doesn't smell that way to me. It smells like the synthetic molecule that you get everywhere, which was a letdown. I was hoping for more. I was also hoping for the oud to assert itself in the opening. It doesn't. It sits in the background and waits. The first hour is floral and very sweet. That's the way that I would describe the fragrance. Very floral, very sweet from the opening. And when I first sprayed this on myself this morning, I went, oh no, oh God, you know, what have I done? I'm gonna have to bear this all day. And I felt that way for the first 30 minutes to an hour, and then luckily the fragrance does begin to change, but it is teeth, you know, gritting for the first half an hour to an hour. You really have to bite down, and if you don't like sweet fragrances like I do, this is gonna hurt. It is very, very floral and very, very sweet. And honestly, I'm not sure where that sweetness comes from. Probably from some of the synthetics, but it's unabashedly sweet. I mean, in your face sweet. What did surprise me is on Parfumo, 25% of the owners are women, 69% of the owners are men, which is a little shocking. I actually would expect those numbers to be flipped. I would expect this to be heavily weighted towards the women's side of things, but because of the way that the floral opening. Now, this is a brand new fragrance. I think there's only 16 people, you know, 6% show neither men or women. Yeah, so there's not a huge, you know, there's not a huge sample yet, if you will. But the percent women to men owning that say they own the scent is a little bit shocking. I thought it would be the other way around. Okay, so the oud hides in the background and comes out later. And one thing that I should mention, even from the get-go, even though I said, yes, the florals, the Jasmine Sambac has, you know, it does smell somewhat like you're smelling, you know, I wouldn't say you're as high quality as some of the Aries Ladores that I was talking about, stuff like that. But I would say it does smell like you're smelling something that has decently high quality materials. However, the vibe of the fragrance itself, not one individual ingredient like the Jasmine Sambac or the rose, but the vibe of the perfume overall is extremely synthetic. And you know, there are synthetic perfumes that can smell very natural. Like, for example, this is Jubilation 25 for men. And I would consider this to be a synthetic fragrance. But it's done so well by Bertrand Duchefort that, I mean, you literally feel like you're standing with the three wise men. Rich Mitch said this last night on the stream, and I completely agree. It smells like you're smelling real frankincense, real myrrh. You know, that old frankincense and myrrh. It smells like you're smelling real blackberries, real, you know, the oud in here, even though I'm sure it's also mostly synthetic, if not all synthetic, it comes across as smelling somewhat natural, at least. All of the ingredients in here, the bay leaves, you know, everything, even though this is a very synthetic composition, most perfumes nowadays are synthetic compositions. This comes across as having this, you know, posh, high-class, natural vibe to me. And there's other examples of synthetic perfume that can come across as smelling natural. This, while it's highly synthetic as well, comes across synthetic to me. The overall blend, if that makes sense. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure that's what most people think about when they think of high-class, you know, niche, upper-class fragrances. It's like one of the people that I follow, the Scented Devil, he coined the term luxury blob, this blob of luxury smelling good, you know, goodness. And while this doesn't go straight to the luxury blob side, it does go to the luxury synthetic side, if that makes sense. So that's one thing that I should mention. And I do think that Jacques Cavalier is a very good perfumer. Now, there is a second reason I decided to use this as my scent of the day today. Normally, I'll just test these at night and do a quick, rundown. But I wanted to give this a full wear because there's a very special note in here that I have come to really adore, and it's called ambrette. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with ambrette, but if you've heard it described, it's basically, you'll also hear it called by another name, by the way. It's also called musk mallow. And musk mallow is the name for this plant that grows in India. And it's almost like this medicinal plant. In the old days, they used it as a replacement for musk. So when they stopped using real deer musk, it was seen as like a replacement for musk. But it's a very expensive plant. It's not cheap to use. And it gives a very distinctive smell. So now that the rise of synthetic musks have come along, and the synthetic musks have kind of replaced this ambrette seed as a musk replacement, ambrette seed has been relegated to be used specifically for the way that it smells. And I love ambrette. There's a new fragrance called, I think, Hera from Papillon that uses an absolutely stunning note of ambrette. If you've ever smelled the Dior Homme line, that's built around ambrette and iris. If you've ever smelled this, this is a fragrance from the house of Jacques Bogart, and it's called Furyo. And I absolutely love this. This is those old vintages I was talking about that I love. And this is animalics, geranium, and ambrette. And so it's like ambrette mixed with animalic, civet, dirty civet, stuff like that. And if you've ever smelled Dior's Santal Noir, that's another one. This is a small little bottle of Santal Noir that I have, which is basically Francois Demachy's ambrette, rose, and sandalwood combo. Very simple fragrance. But if you like the way that Dior uses ambrette, if you've smelled these fragrances, it'll give you an idea of the ambrette journey here. Roja also used it in one of my favorite fragrances of all time, which is Diaghilev. It's right there. I absolutely love Diaghilev, and he used it in a, I think, somewhat similar way. So the way that it's used here in the Louis Vuitton, in Fleur du Désert, is the ambrette is used as like a bridge. Okay, so it's used as a connector, if you will. And what it does is it bridges that sweet, dry, dusty, floral opening, and it bridges it with the dry down of the base. And the base is where you start to get some of that, more of the oud begins to come out. Once you get into that 3 to 4 hour mark, you'll start to see more of the oud come out, and it sits basically on a bed of ambroxan. And ambroxan here is huge. This fragrance has enormous throw. Okay, I'm sure if I walked out into public wearing this, everyone would smell me, because the ambroxan here is ginormous. It has this, it almost has this Dior Sauvage EDT-like throw, at least to my nose. That's what it seems like to me. And, that is, so I got to thinking, why did Jacques Cavalier build this fragrance like this? Because the opening is ultra sweet, ultra floral, ultra sweet. There are some details that you'll notice: the dustiness, the candied-like rose, the honeyed jasmine, the orange blossom is beautiful. It's not my favorite note, but I can appreciate it. And I think what's happening is Jacques Cavalier is, I think he is in a tough position, okay? Because like Francois Demachy at Dior before he left, and now like his replacement, Francis Kurkdjian, they're creating fragrances for houses that want to sell perfume. That's their success is not, did I create a, amazing artistic, well received by the 0.5% of the population who are fragrance, just addicts and who are just insanely in love with the art of perfume like we are, their guideline for success is sales. And so, he is almost a prisoner in effect, because he's a prisoner to Louis Vuitton and LVMH's desire to sell fragrances. So he can't come out with something that smells like this. Even if he wanted to, they would laugh him off stage. He'd probably lose his job instantly. And so he has to walk this line between creating fragrances that are unique, okay, and also mass appealing, to where for the woman who walks into the Louis Vuitton store and spends $5,000 on a bag and doesn't bat an eye, they can just take a bottle of, Fleur du Désert and throw it in there for $365 and not bat an eye. That's the target audience that they're going for. How do they do that? Well, they have to do it to where when that, woman or man walks into the store to buy a Louis Vuitton, whatever, $5,000-$10,000 product, that they can smell it and instantly go, oh, wow, that is nice, and just throw it in there, And the only way to do that is to have a top note, or a top, 15, 20, 30 minutes that smells somewhat mass appealing, that is attention grabbing. And that's kind of where I gave it the eye roll when I first sprayed. I went, oh no. I mean, you're getting a very sweet, almost, the unique factor in the opening is very small, because it almost smells like you've smelled this before, but it's very mass appealing, and it smells expensive to the average person, is what I would say. But the dry down is where I really enjoy it, because the dry down is where that sweetness slowly begins to recede, and you really get to experience the oud accord, which, you know what, I'm fine with the fact that there's no real oud. It doesn't have to be real oud for me to appreciate it. I have a bottle of Versace Pour Homme Oud Noir, and that's fake oud, and I really like it. I enjoy it. Look at the bottle of Tom Ford Oud Wood. Look, that's my dent. I wore this entire bottle. This was almost like a bit of a signature scent for me for a bit. And so, I am not this bougie, I need real oud or I'm going to hate the fragrance. No, absolutely not. I can definitely appreciate the real oud. Gives a totally different, you smell those Russian Adams, those Bortnikovs, it gives a completely different level of, appreciation for oud in the depth, and, the differences. It's almost like when you're smelling oud, it's almost like a religious experience. You know what I mean? And this fake oud, the synthetic oud, if you want to call it that, doesn't give you that, but I still appreciate the smell. The dry down, once the sweetness begins to recede, once that heavy, feminine, traditionally feminine floral opening begins to recede, and you start to get more of the cinnamon. Cinnamon is very intelligently dosed here. It's there, but it's not overdone. Jacques Cavalier is showing his, understanding of traditional fragrance creation, what should go where, what should be dosed properly. It's all done with a very deft hand. The vanilla, or I'm sorry, not the vanilla, the cinnamon is very well done. The honey, it's almost like a ghost honey. You think you're smelling honey, but you're not, it's not, don't think you're smelling this, don't think you're smelling this Boss Number 1 or something like that. No, the honey here is, I call it a ghost honey. It's really focusing, the base focuses on that Assam oud and ambrette seed. And I really love ambrette, because ambrette is one of the notes that I've come to realize that I really love, because it can give off this musky, almost like cognac vibe, like ambery, floral, sometimes fruity, like you're smelling this deep dark plum, like a plum brandy, if you will. And it's here. It's here in the dry down, and that's really where the fragrance begins to turn, and I begin to enjoy it more. The opening is teeth gritting. The dry down is beautiful. And I understand Jacques Cavalier's, I can almost see the thought process in his head. Like, if this was what it smelled like when you first sprayed, people probably wouldn't buy it. as much because it has that, you know, Ambrette has this depth to it, kind of like Oud. Oud has this depth to it. Ambrette has that to my nose. And you know, they had to entice the masses to buy it, so they went with this. Here, I'll read you the blurb, because I think the blurb will give you kind of an idea of what the house is thinking. So here's the blurb, okay? Now, again, this is a brand new release, 2022. I never knew these new releases, so, you know, it'll be interesting to see the people who watch this and find my channel. If this offends you, you're in the wrong place. I'll tell you that right now. If you're offended by anything I've said, you're new to my channel, you're probably not, you know, you're probably not suitable for Channel Ramsey. Okay, so here's the blurb. The depth of Oud, with a honeyed hint of floral nectar, rising like a mirage amid immense sand dunes, a flower unfurls its sumptuous colors, marked by lasting memories of an oasis with lush vegetation in the middle of the Saudi Arabian desert. Master perfumer Jacques Cavalier pays homage to 3 flowers from the region that have become emblematic of perfumery all over the world: jasmine, orange blossom, and the rose. In a composition brimming with contrasts, the depth of Oud Assam bows upon contact with the radiant honeyed tones of this nectar of flowers, a suave, colorful trail that leaves a distinctive imprint of absolute sophistication. The bottle is refillable in stores equipped with a perfume fountain. I don't give a shit about that. I don't know why these brands keep pushing this refillable bottle. Like, who cares if the bottle's refillable? The only thing it's doing is saving you money, the brand, from creating another bottle. Like, why is that a good thing for me? Screw you, create the other bottle. Yeah, apparently these brands think refillable bottles is going to get me to spend $365 on a fragrance. It doesn't. It has zero impact for me anyways. But I don't think like most people do. So maybe that influences some people. I don't know. But I give zero shits about refillable bottles. It's available in 100 and 200 mils. The keynotes are Jasmine from Grass, Absolute, and there are a lot of Absolutes here. So the Absolutes are deeper and darker, and, you know, I've found that the Absolutes add almost this, I mentioned Ambrette has this cognac-like vibe. Absolutes also give this almost, you know, almost aged in like in a wood oak barrel kind of vibe sometimes. So there's Jasmine compared to the Otto version. So there's Jasmine from Grass, Absolute, Sambac Jasmine, Absolute, Orange Blossom, Absolute, Centrifolia Rose, Absolute, Bulgarian Rose Essence, and Oud Wood Essence, which is their way of saying fake oud. And, you know, the pictures are like, the way that they show their pictures of the fragrance are like, the bottle, which, by the way, the bottles are nice. I like the bottles. They're just very standard bottles with a pretty cap, and they change the color of the bottle for each, kind of the way Amouage does it. Standard bottle, but they change the color and you know, not design, but color pattern to match the fragrance, but they keep the standard bottle. That's what Louis Vuitton does with theirs. So the pictures are, you know, a flower blooming out of a desert sand, but the sand looks like it's like, you know, like you're staring at sand made from like a kid's sandbox that's colored purple or something. I would never buy a bottle of this, okay? But if you think about the fragrance itself, it feels like there's a good fragrance underneath. So it's almost like there's a pearl inside of the oyster. The oyster has its mouth closed. You can't open it without really exerting pressure, going to get a tool and prying the oyster open, right? To get to the pearl inside. That's this fragrance. The opening for an experienced nose is going to smell sweet, boring, throwaway, right? Not for me. And this isn't for me. But the dry down, there are touches of the Jacques Cavalier that created the fragrances that I so love. You know, like I said, he created Tuscan Leather, which is one of my favorite leather fragrances. I did a top 50 leather countdown recently on my channel, If you're interested in my favorite leathers, go watch it. This made the list, and I think it was pretty high. Oh, I just absolutely love it. You know, and he did Rive Gauche, which is right here. This is one of the best barbershop scents, I think. Smells like shaving foam with some rosemary and very barbershop, you know, very grown up, masculine. And so he did M7, which I absolutely love, even though that is compared to the new amazing ouds that people like Aries Ladore, Bortnikov are putting out. You might look at M7 from 20 years ago and laugh and say, you know, but there is something about that composition I just absolutely love. I love wearing it. That cola vibe in the opening with the ambriness, and it's just such a, it's just, even though it's, you know, you couldn't put it up there with the best compositions of all time. I don't think it can compete with some of the greatest fragrances of all time. It's one of my favorites to wear. I just love wearing M7, especially in the cooler weather. So Jacques Cavalier has this, you know, talent. He has this gift, absolutely. And the thing about smelling this fragrance, and the reason I use the pearl inside of the oyster analogy, is because there is a good fragrance underneath. Underneath all of the stuff that Louis Vuitton forced him to do to sell perfume to the masses, he has put a good fragrance together. And my guess is, even though I haven't smelled everything from the line, my guess is most of the line is going to be that way, because this is a line that is about, to me, it feels like Louis Vuitton's fragrances are a line that's mostly about sales. They're focusing on moving units first. There are some houses that focus on the, you know, it feels like they focus more on the artistic love of perfume. And Louis Vuitton, to me, does not give off that vibe. They give off a we need to sell perfume vibe. And you smell that in the fragrance, okay? And so I'm not saying that it's a bad fragrance. I'm saying it's a good fragrance wrapped in kind of this mass-appealing cashmere wool, you know, that you have to take it away and bam, you get to the pearl inside of the oyster. So if you're patient, I think you'll enjoy the dry down. Even if you're a guy who florals put you off, I would say test this because of that Assam oud dry down and because of the ambrette in the base. And the ambroxan throw is huge. I mean, if you want to get smelled everywhere you go, this is one to maybe look at. But the pricing is outrageous. $365 for 100 ml. No. I would say this is probably worth about 100 to me. But Louis Vuitton is trying to like push itself above just the standard designer. They're trying to put themselves up there with the Tom Fords and stuff like that. And, you know, honestly, if I want to wear a floral fragrance, I'd rather wear some of the florals from the 80s. You know, there's some beautiful floral fragrances. I mentioned Iquitos yesterday. You know, Paco Rabanne's Tenere from the 80s, a beautiful floral. Teatro alla Scala from Carizia, I absolutely adore that fragrance. You know, and so there are just, you know, even if I wanted to wear something like Samsara, you know, this is a beautiful jasmine with ylang ylang and sandalwood. I don't think I would buy this unless you are newer, starting a collection. This is probably going to attract the people, and this is going to sound bad, but I think of these Louis Vuitton fragrances almost like a Venus flytrap. You know, it's attracting the people who want something better. They want something better than what the designers are putting out, what the standard designers are putting out. And since Louis Vuitton's pricing model tries to hold itself in higher esteem, they're getting trapped by the bright lights, by the flashy purple, you know, bottle and all that stuff. But there is a good fragrance underneath. But the fact that you have to kind of suffer for half an hour to start to peel back the petals of the flower to get to the center, it's not full bottle worthy for me. But I did enjoy wearing it, and I do have to say thank you to my perfume god person who sent this to me, because there's no way in hell I ever would have, you know, had this on the radar if not for him or her. And so thank you very much for sending this to me. I don't do many new, most of the early impression or reviews on my channel are older stuff, or discontinued fragrances that I like stuff like that. And so to get a new 2022 release to talk about something new 2022 is very rare on my channel, so I hope you appreciate it. Do let me know if you've sampled Fleur du Désert by Louis Vuitton. Do let me know if you agree with my thoughts on the Louis Vuitton perfume brand. I think it's good. Again, I give Jacques Cavalier credit for trying to balance both, make his masters at LVMH happy and sell perfume, and try to catch the little flies who come into the shop to buy other Louis Vuitton goods, but also try and put a pearl, a gem of a good fragrance underneath it all. And I think he accomplished that. I wouldn't buy a full bottle, but it's worth a sniff. I'm not going to say it's shite, because I don't think it's shite. It's not for me, though, at least not in this point in my journey. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. I hope to see your faces in the comments and read your comments. I love the interaction with you guys. The support has been overwhelming, outrageous, really. That's one of the things that really has taken me back. Most of these little samples that I've been doing these early impressions on have been because of the kindness of you. There's no way I would ever get to smell this if not, for the kindness of the community. So I do really very greatly appreciate that. And then, of course, the support that you guys have been giving me is something that I never expected. So thank you again. Likes and subscriptions and comments are always appreciated. Every single one of you that's subscribed, I'm very grateful to. And I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow with another video. Cheers, guys. Bye now.